What is my cutouts cardboard ninja coming at you with planned balance changes coming from the test server? Oh my god, they will not stop making changes. Or at least they're planning on making more changes. So let's go through them. They're saying that in-game text strings and descriptions, basically the test server is going to be janky, etc., etc., etc. By the way, these aren't final, but it's what they're looking at to screw us over. Movement parts, interaction with hovers and other movement parts. This is a misnomer. As legs. They're here to fuck over legs again. They're saying the flight altitude of hovers is reduced when there are other movement parts used together with them. There are only other one type of movement parts that can be used with hovers. You know what they are. They're legs. So, while typically hovers can keep you high off the ground, and you could right now as we currently exist in the game, and even going back to the time immemorial, you could combine ML200s and Icarus and whatever you wanted to do. But now they're saying, no, 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 if you are going to use hovers with legs, the flight altitude is reduced of the hovers. Okay. Now you might be wondering, well, why is that? Don't worry, it's a nerf. It's a nerf to legs, not hovers. And it's because mechanical legs are now included in their own separate group. And it's called highest or whatever. Basically, the idea is they're fucking over legs. People right now don't have enough griddias. Straightforward. And what you can do in the meantime by not having those griddias is supplant them with some hovers. So you got the griddia legs and some hovers or something like that. Now they're not doing that anymore. They're like, no, 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 no. Now, if hovers are not close enough to the ground to actually lift up your build, and by the way, they're reducing the flight height of hovers when used with legs. They don't provide any tonnage at all. They're now being treated effectively like wheels. So we now have four categories of height, right? We have the smallest wheel, we've got the standard wheel, we've got and because there's a very low, which is like the smallest wheel, low, which is standard wheels, high, which I believe is now just hovers, but hovers don't work with any other part, and now very high. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. Long story short, they're fucking over legs again. That's what they want to do. All parts, such as rolling based, of which there are only two, which are the rolling balls and the omni wheels, and augers, they're reducing friction parameters, meaning you don't stick to the ground as well. This is a boon and a curse at the same time. The boon being that you can now drift, things aren't going to be as janky. The downside being meaning that you no longer have as much traction. Increased maneuverability of vehicles with these movement parts, change in speed and rotation on the spot, and add the ability to quickly switch to rotation on these movement parts. So for the way it is right now, if you completely stop your tracked vehicle, have you noticed that you're able to spin around a whole lot faster? You just stop your car completely, and then you can spin on a dime. But if you're moving at all, turning is just dog shit. Well, they're changing that. Now, if you release the gas key and press only a turn key, even if you're currently in motion, you'll be able to access that turning. So we'll see how this works. It's a buff to rolling tracks and augers. We'll see what happens. Wheel power score. This is a big change. The power scores of all wheels from common to special rarities is, meaning they're changing what the current rarities are, and they're making them unified. So it's just unified. All common light wheels are 40, 50 for mediums, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100 based on the wheel as you go up in weight and rarity. And here's the thing that's really interesting about this. This is an extreme buff to the Shiv. Right now, the Shiv has its power score not based on the fact that it is a light medium wheel or a light wheel, which by the way means that it's going to be a 80 power score. It currently has a power score of like 100. I want to say 113 or something like that. It's really high, and the reason why is because of what it does. It's got a lot of stuff going for it, and so that's how they initially determined the power score of the wheel. Now, the power score of the Shiv is coming down. Power score of other wheels is, I think, also going down. Basically, everything's going down. So, but it's really interesting. It's a huge buff to a certain set of wheels. Another example would be the lunar wheel and the wheel from the event. That's a rare quality. That's the exact same, but somehow better. Like basically, it's going to become a rare medium. Basically, it's also coming down in power score. It's a lot of things that are coming down in power score. So I'll have to redo my effing tier lists again. Hooray! Structural parts. This is a massive change. Going over this is going to be kind of a pain, but I'll try. The long story short, lunatics aren't changing. Everything about lunatics, as they are now, will always be the case. However, they've identified the fact that mass to durability ratio, they believe now, is more important than anything. And so things such as the scavengers and the steppenwolves have a very poor mass to durability ratio. So what they're going to do, in addition to them having already higher durability, they're dramatically increasing durability. The actual hit points aren't what's being increased. What's being increased in this is damage resistance to types. This is ridiculous. So let's just break this down. Fire starters, they sucked, but basically 5% bullet, 5% explosive, 15% thermal, and they used to have the highest thermal at 15%. That ain't the case anymore. Is going to 10, 10, 20. So they're gaining 5%, 5%, and another 5%. So they're getting 15% total damage resistance across their three respective resistances. Engineers are gaining 20 more because they're getting 10 more bullet and 10 more explosive resistance. Makes them a very good pick. It's just a solid pick. This means, by the way this works, I have a penetration versus resistance video. This is very important. This type of damage resistance is the best kind. It is insane. If a Scorpion, if a Astraeus, or if anything passes through 20% bullet damage resistance, or reduction, not resistance. Resistance is the bad type. Reduction is the good type. It means that the damage is instantaneously, before it deals a single point of damage to the part, reduced by 20%. If you have enough of these 20% parts in a row, it means that Scorpions aren't even going to get into your build. Like, it's crazy. Because every single panel that gets struck takes off 20% of the damage from whatever's currently striking it. Pretty sick nasty. Nomads, 30, 15, 15. Syndicate, 30, 15, 30, which is pretty damn good. Dawn's Children, and this is ridiculous, these are your anti-special weapon faction, 40% thermal resistance. Now, initially, 15% wasn't that good, especially considering its thermal weapons generally heated up your build. 5% is jack shit, 5%, 5%. These are all jack shit. You basically had no resistance. 40% thermal resistance, however, that's a number. That actually will dramatically increase your build's durability against thermal. But what's even more shocking is 50% against energy. It means that you're going to more or less be able to shrug off heavy-hitting things like the Athena, even the Destructor, Pulsar, Quasar, everything that's energy blast. It's crazy. That is a massive amount of damage reduction. This is insane. 50%, half it on contact. That's insane. Hyperborea, previously the highest bullet resistance in the game, and now going to continue to be highest bullet resistance in the game at 35%. That's going to be ridiculous. I told you back when I made that penetration versus resistance video, you should be using the Hyperborean parts as a shell on your vehicle. Now even more so. This is going to change the way people build it. It just is. Because striking something that takes off 35% of the damage initially, and then damage, trying to pass through your build 35% weaker, it's going to be huge. No explosive resistance. 15% thermal, 15% energy. Founders, 2020, they're just straight up an upgrade to the engineers as they should be, but 15-15 on thermal energy. Founder parts are now just universal parts. Just straight up, if I have this on my car, I'm going to last effectively at least 15% longer in fight. That's huge. Scavengers, 1535, previously 5, previously 15. Not a huge buff, but of course strong against blast. And Steppenwolves, 1535, 15, skipping over thermal, giving them pretty damn decent damage resistance. 15% up from 5, 15% up, 35 up from 15. So they, again, Scavengers, Steppenwolves, they're really good against yield blast weapons such as autocannons, and they're kind of okay against hybridized weapons such as standard cannons with bullet blast. Huge change. But I think the reason why this change is coming through, to be honest, is because they're probably going to introduce cryogenic weapons. This just, it doesn't confirm it, but it really, really, really lends to the idea that they're going to invent cryogenic weapons. For those of us who are unfamiliar, cryogenic weapons are going to ignore parts that are hit by cryogenics are going to set these values to 0. And also not be affected by damage pass-through. That's the new damage type. Instead of thermal, they're going cryo. And this feels like that they want to make sure these numbers are nice and big, so people are like, oh man, my guns, they don't work no more, and then they release a gun that cracks through it, and everyone's like, you get the idea. This is false durability. They're increasing durability in order to nerf durability. Changes in parameters of parts and co-drivers. Lupara, damage reduced by 15%. For those of us who didn't know, Lupara is insanely strong. They're finally nerfing it. It has always been insanely strong. It is literally the thing that has made shotguns dominant from the very beginning of the game. And quite frankly, they just understand that. They're saying, look, the shotgun was almost identical to the sledgehammer in terms of damage dealt. It's real. It's true. Like, you Luparas, the damage difference between Luparas and any of the other gray weapons it's not even close. The Avenger doesn't come close. Nothing comes close. Lupara is actually viable, is until this patch comes through, viable up to 8.5k power score. That's how ridiculous this gun is. So it's getting 15% nerf. Ammo pack and expanded ammo pack, this should shock no one. They're no longer gonna increase the amount of fuel in boosters. Enjoy that nerf. Just no more booster fuel, because we're releasing a booster module. We're doing it. We're releasing that fun booster module. Icarus 7, increased inertia when turning, speed reduction. Icarus 4, increased inertia when turning. Basically, hover nerf. Hovers are still the most powerful, it will still be the most powerful, and will always be the most powerful part in the entire game. And they're like, well, we're going to nerf it a little bit, because, they're just the best. As per standard, always good to see your hover nerf in every single patch. Garidia, speed reduction, 5 kph from 70-65, reduced grip so it's easier to push as if they're even hard to push at all, increased inertia when turning, which means that they're trying to make them handle like dog ass, durability reduced from 450 to 410, and by the way, this is a pretty big nerf only because of the fact that Garidia have damage pass-through. I think they have 25% damage pass-through, so 25% damage pass-through actually puts these things' hit points normally closer to around 600, and now they're nerfing it down to around 500 something. And the comment, Garidias are they've completely replaced other legs. No shit. Like, why would you use ML200s? Why would you use big rams? Garidias are just combine the power of the big ram and the durability of the ML200. You made this. They made this. They made this. So they should know that it's going to be better. This is a comment that I constantly make all the time. It's like every single time that anyone in Crossout has a problem with their parts, the devs do listen, but instead of fixing the problem with the part, what they do is they just release a new part, which is what they always do. ML200 durability up from 750 to 790, which is still down from 810, from which is what it was when they nerfed it. Big Ram durability increased from 600 to 660 and 25% explosive resistance. Basically, they're just saying that these legs get shot off more quickly than Garidias. No shit. And this has to do with the fact that they're bigger. Their hurt box is more dogger, more shitter. And the way that they connect to your build can be awkward. So there you go. The Atom straight buff, 2% power penalty better from 17 to 15. Bigfoot, I want to call it a buff, but is it? It's kind of a buff. It is a buff. So the Bigfoot durability increased from 565 to 730. That puts it at the same durability as the Hermits when you're moving at 90 kilometers an hour or faster. That's really, really good. And that's at all times, at all speeds. That is pretty good. The mass increase is probably worthy of the increase to its durability. They're saying the change is designed to increase the rather low survivability of the wheels, which is weird because they survive pretty long. You just need to defend them. We significantly increase the durability of Bigfoots in exchange for making them noticeably heavier. We like the heavy and large wheel to be durable and playable on more than just fast cars. Interesting. So they want slow cars with Bigfoots. That's weird. Fair enough. Omnis. Power score increase. Small, like nothing else. It's just a power score increase. And there's a reason for this. I mean, they are buffing Omnis and all the tracks. But in addition to the previous buff that was read about tracks, every track is getting better. Step 1, small tracks, which were already good, get 5 more kilometers an hour to their max top speed. In addition to that, power penalty reduction. of 3%. Reinforced tracks, 5 more kph. 3%, I'm sorry, 5% reduction to power penalty. Sleipnir tracks, there's your 5 kph, there's your 5%. Armored track, there's your 5 kph, there's your 10% power reduction, penalty reduction. Tank track, there's your 5 kph, there's 7% power reduction. And Goliath tracks, there's your 5 kph, and you're looking at a 15% power penalty reduction. Huge buff to tracks, and this is because tracks are still dog shit. Doesn't matter if this goes through. Hopefully it does. Tracks are still going to be bad. They're bad. I didn't make tracks. They know that. They know what it is. Tracks are worse than wheels. Anyway. The Catalina. So this is, everyone knows what the Catalina is, but there's going to be a nerf to the Catalina, or a buff to the Catalina, or who knows? What is it? We can't tell. So the Catalina's new stats are going to reduce the damage of all mounted weapons by 15% instead of 17%. This is reverting the nerf that they did before. However, they are going to change as damage dealt damage is going to increase by 7% a stack instead of 8% a stack, and stacks are going to take 0.5 seconds longer to accrue. Got pinged. People are like, whoa, is this a buff? Is this a nerf? What is this? I mean, because the idea is that 15% is going to mean that your base damage is at 85%, whereas 17% means your base damage is 83%, and with this increase in growth, which one does more, which one blah, 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 right? Well, here's the deal. I decided to graph it out for you. Here it is. There's your answer. The old Catalina is the blue line, and the new Catalina post-change is the green line. 10 is over here, which is 100 when you have 10 stacks. This is your damage bonus. So as you can see, at around 3 stacks, which is right here, they're almost exactly the same. They're almost exactly the same. One's doing 3.02 damage, one's bonus, and the other one's doing, hold on, let's find out. You're doing 29% more damage. No, the numbers are correct, but my brain is stupid. You're doing 2% more damage. You're doing 2 to 3% more damage, basically, with either. However, your 4th stack, the current Catalina, which is the blue line, if I could select it, there we go. The current Catalina is going to do basically 10% more damage, and the new Catalina is going to do 8% more damage, and so on and so forth until you reach the cap at 10 stacks, where you're going to do, unfortunately, in the new Catalina, 144% more damage, 144.5% more damage, whereas the current Catalina ends at 149.5% more damage. So everyone's like, it gives 80% more damage. It doesn't. It never did, because you reduce your base damage. You start out down here, which is at 8.5% damage. I'm sorry, 85% damage and 83% damage, right? So that's where you normally start, and based on increase, you end up here at 10 stacks at basically nearly 150% damage. It's 149.7 or whatever. And then nowadays, not nowadays, what it's going to be is 144.5. So you're losing not much. You're losing about 100. Not 100. You're losing about 4% damage or so. It's not that much. It's not that much, but it is a minor nerf. The maximum amount of damage that you're going to deal with the Catalina is muted over time. You're going to deal a little bit more on stacks 1, 2, and 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're going to do less. It's just a nerf. So it's just a nerf. And that's what's coming for the Catalina. Another damage nerf. And yes, by the way, this is a greater damage nerf than the initial Catalina, which was, of course, I didn't bother graphing it, but the initial Catalina when it came out was up here. It was just like that. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Continuing on. The Blight Cabin. Another nerf to the Blight Cabin. They nerfed it before, but they're like, that's not good enough. So this perk is now also going to add a 0.5% to the part's heat level from flame weapons. That sounds like a buff, but it turns out this is a weird nerf. You'll see. The distance recorded charge perk is reduced. That's a buff. It's from 500 to 300 meters. However, the perk damage bonus is yet again reduced from 35% to 20%. If I recall correctly, didn't this start at like 45%? Like they're just cutting the blight down. They're saying that they want to remove the cabin status as a non-alternative cabin for flamethrowers, largely due to its high bonus fire damage. In other words, we're nerfing its bonus to fire damage because people are using it because it has a high bonus to fire damage. Okay. In return, the perk now additionally increases the heating of parts. Please note that 0.5% to heating level means that if a flamethrower heats a part by 0.5% for a single infliction of damage, it will heat it by 1% in the same amount of time under the effect of the Blight perk. We also have increased the damage of flamethrowers, so their damage remains the same when affected by the captain's perk. So what they're saying is they are increasing damage on flamethrowers because they're nerfing the Blight. So this means that in general, all flame weapons are just simply stronger because of the fact that they're nerfing the Blight. And we'll get to that later. Also, they're increasing this heating charge crap. It's just silly. Continuing on. Cerberus. They've actually given the cabin a perk. This Cerberus doesn't have a perk. It just has the front melee weapon. So now, when the front melee weapon is on, all other melee weapons that are on the Cerberus have their damage increased by 25%. This is weird because that's dumb. Like, I get the whatever. Because the reason is, like, you're already trying to hit with, you want to hit with the perk, right? You want to hit with the Cerberus in front of the Cerberus, which will then enable the perk to make your other melee weapons deal more damage. But if your other melee weapons are hitting, then it means that you most likely the Cerberus weapon's not hitting. Long story short, it is a troubled cabin. But let's continue. Icebox. They are increasing the damage bonus from 15 to 20%. 5% more damage is 5% more damage, and a 40% rotation speed for those weapons, meaning that you get to aim a little faster. Icebox isn't that good right now. Give it a little buff. Hugin. They're reducing the power by 9%, and they're increasing the mass from 2202 to 2720, and the mass limit is being increased by 600. They're basically making it bigger and slower. They just think that it's too fast. Weird. Yokai. The yokai is the weapon that you've got to land your shots near your opponents. It does both energy and blast, and if you land your shot near the opponents by striking the ground, the blast damage is not reduced over distance traveled, etc. More damage, just straight up 12% more damage. In current realities, Yokai's loses to other epic weapons, increasing damage will increase its attractiveness and effectiveness. Ye Old Quasar, they're adding hit damage of 65 points and 50% penetration ability. The durability of the Quasar is being increased from 535 to 578. Long story short, the Quasar and the Pulsar, which will be listed later, have no bullet component. And because they have no bullet component, they are just pure explosive. They're basically big autocannons. They just detonate immediately. So they're adding a quasar damage. They're adding bullet damage to the quasar, and I believe the pulsar later, with penetration to allow for similar mechanics to actual cannons. But what I need to check, or what needs to be checked, is they're saying they're adding this, but we don't know if what they're actually doing is removing that from the blast and turning it into bullet. Because if they're doing that, that's actually a bit of a nerf. But we'll see what ends up happening. Because right now, quasars, pulsars, they can be stopped entirely by damage pass-through parts. But with any amount of bullet damage, they'll be able to pass through and deal damage behind. The Akari. Everybody who loves their Akari Punisher build, get ready to read the nerf that's coming. They're nerfing the Akari. The effect of the perk now only deals damage to structural parts. Wah, wah. So, no more softening up Mastodons, no more softening up, mammoths, cannons, Athena, it doesn't matter, all guns. All guns. So no longer does the Akari deal damage to anything other than structural. But the damage is increased from 0.6 to 1.2, so they're doubling the damage, and the durability of the part, after which the damage stops being dealt, has been reduced from 25% to 10%. That is a buff. Just so you know, it might sound like it's not a buff, but that is a buff. It means that you can leave someone's entire build at 10% of its durability, instead of leaving their entire build, including their weapons, at 25%. Will people still keep using the Akari? I don't think so. People are only using the Ikari now to soften up fucking guns. They hit you, they know they've weakened up your guns, and then they punch through your guns. That's what they're doing. Well, they're nerfing the shit out of that, so it's no longer going to be an anti-gun stripping thing that weakens every gun on your build, weakens your generator and all that stuff like that. It's just only going to weaken all the structural parts. The Pyro. And by the way, this is energy damage. Just so you know. So if you count in the changes that are coming up here, you want 50% energy damage, you can just Don's Children that shit. and it would put its damage back to what it currently is, which is 0.6%. The Pyre reduces the optimal distance. I didn't even know that lock-on missiles had an optimal distance. I don't even know if that means that they can only go 200 meters and explode, but they're reducing it from whatever it is to 200 meters. I don't know if that means that the Pyre can only travel 200 meters. I don't believe so, but that's what they're doing. I don't know why they're nerfing the Pyre. Honestly, Pyre doesn't need a nerf. Even in air combat, the Pyre specifically does not need a nerf. It's not that strong. The Remedy, damage increased by 13%. This is because they're nerfing the Blight, and so they want to pass that savings back on to you. The FHT-3 Flock. Everyone knows this is coming because you assholes wouldn't stop using this as armor. So they're like, whoops, you're using this armor. No, you're not anymore. We're nerfing that armor. Whoopsie. But it does have explosive damage resistance, so if it's in your build and it doesn't take a direct hit, it might survive. The ammunition's been increased by 20 per, so that's actually a lot because with ammo crates, etc. The active range has been increased from 9 to 12 meters. This is because it wasn't blocking missiles like it should have, but now it's going to block missiles even better. And so the comment is, it's no secret the Flock was used for armor. You guys were doing that shit again. You're using radar armor again, but you're using the Flock. The Thyrus, damage increased by 8%. The number of charges increased from 7 to 10. Huge buff to the Thyrus. This is the 11 energy railgun that fires 4 of its shots simultaneously. If you have a charge, now you get 3 more of those charges and 8% more damage. Damage right now is 260. So let's just whip out our calculator. You're looking at, dang it, do it 260 times. There you go. So it's going up to 280.8. Pretty big buff. That's a pretty big buff. The AA Gun 4 AA Gun Dash 4 Starfall. Funny story about the Starfall. I told you guys this before, and I'll tell this to you now. Starfall sucks dick. You know it sucks dick. I know it sucks dick for its energy cost, for its size, for its rate of fire, for everything that it does, even with its perk. It's dog shit. This is a dookie dog shit gun. Do you know why? I told you guys this. Because it does therm damage. The damage of the Starfall is identical to the damage of the therm, except you're paying fucking 2,000 more power score for it. And you can only bring 2 instead of bringing 4 with the therm. Let's see what they're changing. Damage increase 10% and durability increase. So I just want to point this out. And this is true. That is 1 damage. Just so you know, that's 10% might sound like that's 1, but that is the number 1. 1 damage. Right now, the AA Gun Starfall does 11. So technically it's 1.1. If it's a 10%, it's going to be 1.1. The B12 Dove, also a dog shit weapon. Brought up many times. It's dog shit. Energy drain reduced from 7 to 6. And of course, correspondingly, the power score comes down because power score is based on energy cost. And the damage is increased by 25%. Initially, the Mind Layer was a rather highly specialized weapon that would not be effective at all times. But even in the situations for which it was designed, its performance left much to be desired. Long story short, it's designed for you to fly and duke down on freaking ground targets. And even when doing that, it's dog shit. So they're just making 25% better. RA1 Heather. I'm going to rant about this just because of the fact we're here right now. Cooldown increased from 10 to 16 seconds. Cooldown? What's cooldown? That's reload. That's not a cooldown. Projectile speed reduced by 10%. That's not a cooldown. That's reload. They're adding 6 seconds to the reload of the Heather. It's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Projectile speed reduced by 10%. This is ridiculous. Why? Can anyone in the chat tell me why? You guys know the answer. I've actually told this to you before. I'm not going to leave you hanging. This is because of the fact that they're giving fucking fused Heathers away. Every single time they do this, every time there's a fusion event, everyone fuses their weapons. And they're like, oopsie, everything's too fast now. Let's now do the nerf of the fusion. Instead of just leaving the thing alone and letting people who have the normal weapon be good at the game, they're like, no. The weapon right now, unfused, as I'm speaking to you right now, pre-nerf, is unfused going to be the same. Actually, it's going to be better. It's going to be better than the fused version will be after these changes. When we get the Heather fused, which is currently available in their mini pass, which a lot of people are trying to do, it's going to be worse than it is right now pre-fusion. They have to stop doing this shit, man. This is really, really fucking annoying. They keep releasing shit, releasing fused versions of that shit, and then saying, whoopsie, the fused version of this shit is too good. So what we're going to do is we're going to nerf the fused version to be exactly the same or worse than the current version. And that means that if you have the current version, or if you know, an unfused version, you're fucked. And they keep fucking doing this, and they're doing it again. This is huge. This is a huge fucking nerf. So, I don't know. I mean, I do know. It's just annoying. It's annoying and stupid. Hooray, buff to the Mandrake, by the way. It says reloading time reduced from 1 second to 3 seconds. That is not what that means. The Mandrake doesn't have a 1 second reload. You know it doesn't have a 1 second reload. I know it doesn't have a 1 second reload. This is the time it takes to charge the shot. So the Mandrake and the Heather, both, you have to hold down left mouse button, it charges up, then it's ready to fire, then you let go and it fires. The Mandrake was just strictly worse, and is strictly worse, even after all these changes in the Heather. It just is strictly worse. And it takes 3 times as long for the weapon to charge up to shoot. So now they're making that charge at the same time as the Heather. But regardless of that, there is no such thing as cooldown on a Heather. That's reload. They're fucking the reload of the Heather by 6 seconds. That is a 60% increase to reload. Jesus Christ. But then again, the Heather, just to be fair, Heather fucking pwns. Like, let's be real. You and I both know Heather rapes. It is a very powerful gun. You hit someone with the Heather, they're gone. You can straight gone people from start of match. So that's I can understand why they want to nerf it, but the sheer fact that they're releasing the fused version and they just happen to be nerfing everything in the way that the fused version is bullshit. Right now the fused version that everyone has is 15% increase to speed. But remember, they're nerfing base speed. So even if you have a 15% increase, this isn't a 1-to-1. You're not 5% ahead, right? So assuming that previous projectile speed was 100%, God, I hate having to do this math. Let's just do it again. Right here. Let's find out how big of a nerf and how slow our projectiles are going to travel. If right now we have 100%, right, but we reduce this to 90%, right, and then we are going to give ourselves, let's assume that we get 15%, we're going to have 103.5%. So, oh my God. So this means that having fused Heathers from this fucking battle pass, or assuming that you paid for the Heathers from the initial battle pass, and you have that, you lucked out, and you got that 15% motherfucking projectile velocity, they're converting that to 3.5% projectile velocity. Enjoy that. Enjoy that nerf. Fucking Christ. Again. 3.5% projectile velocity off a fused Heather. And everybody else, they just have 90% projectile velocity. So fuck them. If like everybody that's not fused, you've got 90% projectile velocity. Everybody who is, you've got a 3.5% projectile velocity and 60% reload increase. Amazing. The assembler. Charging time reduced from 2 seconds to 1 second. Everyone knows the assembler's ass. It is total dog shit. I've mentioned it before. Every time the assembler comes up, I'll mention it again. It's dog shit. So they're making it so you can actually charge the gun. Because right now, standing around doing nothing, it's kind of dumb. The reload time, however, was increased from 0.2 seconds to 1.45 seconds. Now, I don't know if this is... Okay, so everyone knows that the assembler doesn't really have a machine gun version, right? So what this means is right now, if you have assemblers, you could rapidly tap the left mouse button, and your assembler will fire a very small, very slow, very weak projectile, and you can shoot them out a whole bunch. But nobody does that. It's total dog shit. It does nothing. I've never seen anyone try and burn people down with assembler left mouse clicks. So that's gone. Instead, there's going to be an actual reload of 1.45 seconds. And this is to offset that you're losing 1 second off of charge. So the DPS is going to stay the same, according to what they're saying, but it's going to, air quotes, feel better, which means if the DPS stays the same and all that stuff, the assembler's still going to be ass. The Pulsar. It adds 78 points of damage, 50% penetration, and more durability for the Pulsar. Good. I like the Pulsar. I want to see him come back into the game. Hurricane. Optimal range reduced to 200 meters. We got to figure out what optimal range means. Like, I know that missiles don't just start losing damage, do they? I don't think that's a thing. So, not sure what this is. Hurricane's supposed. I hate the Hurricane. Trust me, I hate it, but I don't think it's supposed to only have a 200-meter range. Anyway, the Draco damage because Blight nerf. Yokozuna, huge buff, 3 kilometers an hour, mass reduction. So you're losing, which is good, by the way. It means that the actual mass of the cabin is coming down by about 1,000. So it is a lighter cabin with faster speeds. And for those of us who don't know, the Yokozuna's perk has been also buffed recently. So you don't have to target anyone. You just push a button, launches 3 drones, gives everyone a speed boost. It's actually a pretty interesting cabin. But, it falls on the wayside behind, damage buff cabins. Firebug, damage increase because they nerfed the Blight. The Grizzly co-driver, by the way, the final change is a nerf. They are nerfing Grizzly because shocking nobody, as it should shock nobody, because it's not a shock. Grizzly's too strong. He's just too strong. So, his perk, instead of taking 3 hits at any part of your vehicle, only activates when your cabin gets hit 2 times. So you got to get hit twice in your cabin. This changes nothing for people who use the Ermac, but this changes everything for everyone else, because everyone knows that we're using Grizzly because of the fact that we're trying to, protect our build. It just dramatically increases the durability of our build. And so with this nerf, Grizzly is going down on that tier list because activating his perk is going to be difficult. Most builds don't have their cabin exposed. In fact, 99.9% of their build, the people who are running Grizzly have all of their stuff between the cabin and the opponent. It's usually like, hovers, you've seen them, where they shove every 3,000 bumpers in front. So this is getting nerfed. That's huge. It means that the general durability of every player in the game is going to come down. But, and I'll scroll all the way back up, the general durability of everybody is going up. And by the way, this damage reduction, all of this is damage reduction. Grizzly's damage reduction is damage resistance. So resistance is worse in every way, shape, and form. So honestly, I feel that's kind of a wash, especially if you can still get the perk activated by taking damage to your cabin. And the effect is going to last for 6 seconds instead of 4 seconds, and that's because it's so much harder to activate. There you go. And those are the changes. There is a couple of things in here that make me shake my fist and make me not happy. Just to see, there's a lot of stuff to be happy about. Good tracks can get as strong as they want. They're still dog shit. Big Ram's ML200 buff, sure. Grittia, slight nerf, probably still better than every other leg. Probably. Nerf to Icarus for no reason. Nerf to combining legs with anything even further. Why don't they just turn it off? Hold on a second. Why don't they just do what they did before? If you're using legs, no other movement part works. Eat it. That's what they're trying to say. Just fucking do it. Do it, pussies. Like, fucking stop half-assing this shit. Just say legs are a unique movement part that can never be combined with anything other than legs. Suck dick. Then we'll all groan, but at least it'll make sense. These half measures are all fucking ridiculous. Whatever. Rolling part improvements, improvement to traction, improvement to wheels, power score, so your builds are coming on down in PS, which is good. Nerf to the ammo pack, because we've got to use that new booster module. Now you have to fucking buy it. Now you fucking have to buy the pack, because everyone's gotten used to having booster fuel in your boosters. Now you got to fucking pay. Jesus. Total bullshit. It means that you got to put that shit on your Leviathans. It's so dumb. Yeah. Other than that, nothing too surprising. Catalina nerf number 2 is coming through. We'll see how it goes. Like, comment, subscribe. If you have anything to say, drop them in the comments. You know I reply. All right, guys. Peace. Oh, Jesus Christ. Starfall, just terrible.